This is, perhaps, one of the single most well-known photographs of the American participation in the Second World War, taken the morning of June 6, 1944, by U.S. Coast Guard Chief Photographer's Mate Robert F. Sargent. The photo is entitled, "Into the Jaws of Death." The men in the photo are members of Company E of the 16th Infantry Regiment of the 1st Infantry Division. The 1st Infantry Division, the Fighting First, is the longest continuously serving division in the United States Army. Constituted in 1917, their service in the Great War was extraordinary. 5 members of the division received medals of honor. In the Second World War, in 1942, they were among the first troops to land in North Africa. George Patton specifically requested that they be part of the invasion of Sicily in 1943, and in June of 1944, they were once again the tip of the spear, as the Allies planned to invade Fortress Europe. It is history that deserves to be remembered. The 16th Infantry Regiment predates the 1st Infantry Division, and its service can almost serve as a list of the American Army's most deadly engagements. The modern regiment was first constituted on May 4, 1861, as the 1st Battalion of the 11th U.S. Infantry. They fought in some of the hardest fights of the U.S. Civil War: Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Wilderness, and Cold Harbor. They were at Appomattox in April of 1865, where they helped to collect the arms from Lee's defeated army. They became the 16th Regiment after reorganization in 1869. They served throughout the West in the Indian Wars. Company K guarded Geronimo after his capture. They helped to take Kettle Hill in the Spanish-American War and fought in 27 engagements in the Philippine-American War that followed. In 1912, they joined General Pershing on the fruitless expedition to capture Pancho Villa. In the Great War, they were among the first 4 American regiments to land in France. They marched through Paris on July 4, 1917, to help improve French morale. They were the first American unit to fight and endure casualties in the war. In the bloody fighting, the regiment earned its motto: "No mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great. Duty first." 97 members of the regiment earned Distinguished Service Crosses in the war. It is, then, no wonder that the regiment would see extensive and distinguished service in the Second World War. According to the regimental history, the regiment shipped out for England in April of 1942, and on 26 October 1942, the regiment left Scotland by ship, which, as part of a large invasion force, headed to French Morocco. Despite their years of service, this would be the first amphibious landing for the 16th. Lieutenant Everett Booth recalled in the 1995 book, "No Mission Too Difficult, Old Buddies of the 1st Division Tell All About World War II. I remember one bright moonlit night when I saw the ships were moving out. This was unusual, since I normally would be docked in the bay. We sailed into the Atlantic and down towards Africa." On the boat was Private John Joseph Pender, Jr., born in Keys Rock, Pennsylvania on June 6, 1912. The Harris, Pennsylvania Patriot News reported in 2018 that Pender had been valedictorian of his high school class and had gone on to study radio communications at the National Radio Institute in Washington. His dream, however, was the big leagues. Dick Thompson of the Society for American Baseball Research noted that in 1941, Pender had pitched for 17 wins and 11 losses with a 2.93 ERA in the minor leagues. He was looking forward to the 1942 season, but Thompson writes, his dream of reaching the major leagues would never be realized. He was drafted in January 1942 and became a radio technician for the headquarters company of the 16th Infantry Regiment. They fought in the Tunisian campaign, including the difficult battle at Kasserine Pass, where they played a role in helping to stabilize the front. The regimental history notes, for its actions at Kasserine, the regiment was decorated with the Croix de Guerre by the French government, and received the first presidential unit citation for its actions near Matur. In Tunisia, they were joined by Lieutenant Jimmy Monteith. Born July 1, 1917, Monteith served in the Corps of Cadets at the Virginia Polytechnic Institute. Drafted in October of 1941, Monteith applied for Officers' Candidacy School while in basic training. He was commissioned a second lieutenant on June 20, 1942. In April of 1943, he requested transfer to the 1st Infantry Division. He was assigned to Company L, but missed most of the fighting as the Africa Corps surrendered shortly after his arrival. The regiment faced more difficulty in Sicily. The regimental history writes, next came Sicily. Shortly before 0100 hours on 10 July 1943, the first wave of the 16th Infantry boarded landing craft for the assault on that island. After achieving a relatively bloodless hold on the beachhead in the darkness, the regiment pushed into the hills beyond. There, the regiment was soon hit hard with an armored counterattack by German tanks. Despite numerous enemy tanks and reinforcements, the 16th Infantry desperately held on by receiving assistance from the heavy guns of the U.S. Navy and the timely arrival of the regiment's cannon company. Lieutenant Booth received the Silver Star for actions in Sicily. The citation says, while manning a forward observation post, Lieutenant Booth noted the imperative need for more support of his organization's left flank. Communication with his company and battalion command post having failed, he fearlessly proceeded under intense enemy fire from his observation post to obtain the required support. Although twice forced back, he gallantly persisted and successfully accomplished his mission. Pender was awarded the Bronze Star for courageously remaining at an exposed observation post on Sicily in July 1943 to transmit valuable tactical information to a regimental command post. During this time, his position was under severe artillery and mortar bombardment. On September 3rd, Monteith received a field promotion to first lieutenant. After Sicily, the Fighting First was not sent to Italy. Rather, they were shipped back to England. The Allies were training for the invasion of France, and their most experienced division would be there. Monteith wrote a letter to his family from England on New Year's Day, 1944. I would not change if I were given the chance, even to have some easy job in the rear area. Of course, I can't say that I should ever be lucky enough to have a son that I would want him to go through something like this, but if events forced him, I would want him to prove himself. As for the 1st Division, every time I look at the shoulder insignia, the Red 1, I get a thrill. There is no better fighting unit in the world. When the Germans were confident of victory on several occasions and all circumstances were against the 1st, the men rose to the occasion and hurled them back in great confusion and disorder. There is a great feeling of satisfaction that one gets with oneself. I would not change. The Big Red One would need everything they had for the upcoming battle. The South Carolina Daily Gazette wrote in 2004, among the many Allied military units storming the Normandy coast on June 6, 1944, was the 16th Infantry Regiment of the U.S. Army's 1st Infantry Division. Its members faced a particularly daunting task. As part of the first wave of the largest amphibious assault in history, the regiment was assigned to clear the Omaha beach landing sectors codenamed Easy Red and Fox Green. They knew it was a difficult assignment. The Gazette writes, that steak dinner the night before D-Day, recalled Charles Hangsturfer, then a captain in the 16th Regiment, was just like they would give a convicted murderer his last meal on the evening of his execution. There was difficulty from the start. Virginia Tech magazine explains the Big Red One boarded ships near Dorchester, Dorset, England, June 1st to 4th, 1944, and sailed the evening of June 5th to invade France the following day. As they approached the coast of Normandy, they ran into problems. According to historical records of the 16th Infantry, heavy seas, numerous underwater obstacles, and intense enemy fire destroyed many craft and caused high casualties even before the assault battalions reached shore. Most supporting weapons, including DD tanks, were swamped. The Daily Gazette writes, the troops learned upon landing that their arrival was later than expected, and often far from its intended destination. D-Day was a massive operation, but the sector called Omaha stood out. The Imperial War Museum explains, troops from the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions landed on Omaha Beach on 6 June. Omaha was the most heavily defended of the assault areas, and casualties were higher than on any other beach. Preliminary Allied air and naval bombardments failed to knock out strong defensive points along the coast, and the Americans had difficulty clearing the beach obstacles. The experienced German 352nd Infantry Division was taking part in anti-invasion training in the area and was able to reinforce coastal defense units. Ed Lembarski, a sergeant in F Company, recalled, there were so many bullets zeroing in on the first wave that it was impossible to cross the beach. Being in that first wave was like committing suicide. Booth recalled, they didn't get us very close to the sandy beach. I tell you, I think they wanted to get rid of us as soon as they could. Pender, then a technician 5th grade, the equivalent of a corporal, was carrying his 80 pounds of radio equipment. The website of the Department of Defense writes, an artillery shell landed near Pender's boat and tore holes in it, killing some men immediately and causing chaos among those left behind. As the vessel began to fill with water, its ramp opened to let the men out about 100 yards offshore. Devastating machine gun and artillery fire rained down on them as they tried to wade their way to land in waist-deep water. Many were killed before they even got to shore. As Pender left the boat, the department writes, he was only a few yards from his boat when he was hit twice by enemy fire, with one hit tearing into the left side of his face. Witnesses said Pender continued forward, holding the equipment in one arm and the flesh from his face with the other hand. As he had in Sicily, Pender understood the importance of communications, and he did his job without regard for the enemy fire. The department explains, he knew setting up communications was crucial to directing naval and air support that could take out the German installations decimating the shoreline. It was the only way they could survive the ordeal. Pender delivered the radio to the shore. He then turned around and went back into the fire-swept surf to gather more parts and equipment. A medal citation reads, refusing to take cover afforded or to accept medical attention for his wounds, Technician 5th grade Pender, though terribly weakened by loss of blood and in fierce pain, on 3 occasions went into the fire-swept surf to salvage communication equipment. He recovered many vital parts and equipment, including another workable radio. On the third trip, he was again hit, suffering machine gun bullet wounds to his legs. Still, this valiant soldier would not stop for rest or medical attention. Remaining exposed to heavy enemy fire, growing steadily weaker, he aided in establishing the vital radio communication on the beach. The indomitable courage and personal bravery of Technician 5th Grade Pender was a magnificent inspiration to the men with whom he served. John Monteith's Company L was facing its own difficulties. Aaron B. Jones, a sergeant in his company, recalls, "When we hit the beach, the air was thick with machine gun, rifle, and shell fire. Lieutenant Monteith brought his men together and faced the first obstacle, layers of heavy barbed wire. After selecting a place where it could be blown open, he led men with a Bangalore torpedo in blasting the wire open. Beyond this were 2 minefields, and he led the way through these. The field was traversed by machine gun fire from 2 enemy emplacements and from a pillbox, and when the men took cover, he stood studying the situation and then ran back to the beach. On the beach were 2 tanks, buttoned up and blind because of heavy machine gun fire that was directed on them. He walked through all that fire to bang on the sides of the tanks and instruct the men inside to follow him. Then, walking in front, he led the tanks into the pillbox, where they put it out of action. He then led his men against 2 machine gun positions and knocked them out, and then set up a defensive position to hold until more units could be brought up from the beach." A medal citation reads, "First Lieutenant Monteith landed with the initial assault waves on the coast of France under heavy enemy fire. Without regard to his own personal safety, he continually moved up and down the beach, reorganizing men for further assault. He then led the assault over a narrow protective ledge and across the flat exposed terrain to the comparative safety of a cliff. But the company came under a new attack, and once again Jimmy Monteith rose to the occasion." Jones recalled, "In that sector, the enemy was not fighting from fixed positions, but was moving around in the hedgerows and setting up automatic weapons. In this manner, a fairly large group started an attack on the position and set up machine guns on the flanks and rear. The Germans yelled for us to surrender because we were surrounded. Lieutenant Monteith didn't answer, but moved towards the sound of their voices and launched a rifle grenade at them from 20 yards, knocking out the machine gun position. Even with a larger force, the Germans couldn't break through our position, so they set up 2 machine guns and started spraying the hedgerow. Lieutenant Monteith got a squad of riflemen to open up on the machine gun on the right flank. Under cover of the fire, he sneaked up on the gun and threw hand grenades, which knocked out that position." Historian Pete Lamb wrote that Monteith's actions were the most important, for he single-handedly turned defeat into victory on that bullet-swept, corpse-strewn beachhead called Omaha. The Daily Gazette notes that the 16th took nearly 1,000 casualties, killed, wounded, or missing, nearly a third of the regiment. Among those was John Pender. His citation, he was one of 4 men to receive the Medal of Honor on June 6th, says, "This dauntless soldier was hit for the 3rd time and killed. It was his 32nd birthday. When told of his nephew's death, his uncle wrote, 'I won't believe he's gone until this mess is over and he doesn't return in body to Valley View.'" And Jimmy Monteith, his Medal of Honor citation reads, "When the enemy succeeded in completely surrounding 1st Lieutenant Monteith and his unit, and while leading the fight out of the situation, 1st Lieutenant Monteith was killed by enemy fire. When he was told of his brother's death, Bob Monteith, serving in the Navy, wrote his mother, 'This will be the hardest letter I have ever written, for there just aren't words that will tell you how I feel, or the things that are in my heart tonight. No mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great. Duty first.'" The Gazette-Journal writes, despite the heavy losses and powerful German defense, as the day wore on, it became clear that the 16th Infantry Regiment had secured a foothold on Omaha Beach. On July 2nd, General Eisenhower spoke to the men of the regiment. "I'm not going to make a long speech, but this simple little ceremony gives me an opportunity to come over here and, through you, say thanks. You are the finest regiment in our army. I know your record from the day you landed in North Africa and through Sicily. I'm beginning to think that your regiment is a sort of Praetorian Guard, which goes along with me and gives me luck." But of course, securing the beachhead was nowhere near the end of the fighting. After the beach came the hedgerow country. After that came Belgium, where they helped the 1st Division eliminate 6 German divisions. In November, they had the bloody fighting in the Hurtgen Forest, where Everett Booth received the Distinguished Service Award. In December, they defended Elsenborn Ridge in the German counterattack called the Battle of the Bulge. The 16th fought through to the bitter end. The regimental history writes, in 443 days of combat, the regiment lost 1,250 officers and men killed, an additional 6,278 wounded or missing in action. Men of the regiment received 4 Medals of Honor, 87 Distinguished Service Awards, and 1,926 Silver Stars. In a letter home to his family, Jimmy Monteith once said, "People forget the soldiers that fight their battles for them in a matter of hours." 81 years after his death, it is up to us to remember.
I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of The History Guy, and if you did, please feel free to like and subscribe and share The History Guy with your friends. And if you also believe that history deserves to be remembered, then you can support The History Guy as a member on YouTube, a supporter on our community and locals, or as a patron on Patreon. You can also check out our great merchandise shop, book a special message from The History Guy on Cameo.